Good morning, everybody. My name is Sally Kuchar-Johnson, and I will be the chair of the Governance and Priorities Committee meeting today for July 2nd, 2024. I will now call the meeting to order at 9 a.m. On behalf of the Council, I will present the territorial land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that we are located on the lands of Treaty 6, which is the traditional home of the Cree, Dene, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Nakota Sioux Nations, members of the Métis Nations of Alberta, Inuit, and all First Nations sharing the land for generations. We recognize the long history and the contributions of the Indigenous peoples who've cared for this land from time immemorial to the present. We acknowledge that we are all treaty people bound to one another by the spirit and the intent of the treaty as long as the sun shines and the grass grows. Mayor Gamble has something to say.
Great, thank you, and warm welcome to everyone this morning. And just for information, throughout our four-year term, we do have an opportunity for each of the councillors to serve as deputy mayor for a four-month term, twice throughout the rotation. So sincere thank you to the outgoing deputy mayor, Councillor Burney, and a warm welcome to our new deputy mayor this morning, Councillor Kuchar-Johnson, who will serve in the deputy mayor position from July through October 2024. And I will say that you have attracted the largest crowd I think we've had in here. So warm welcome to you, and this is all about you today. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Gamble. I will now proceed with today's committee member attendance. There are 4 councillors in attendance and 1 mayor in the chamber today. We have 1 councillor not present today for today's meeting. That's Councillor Alan Hoofsloot. Moving to our second agenda item, I will ask committee members if there is any additions or deletions for today's agenda. Seeing none, I will ask administration if they have any additions.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, committee members. No additions or deletions from administration.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I would like to ask committee member Natalie Burney to put a motion on the floor to adopt today's meeting agenda.
So moved, Deputy Mayor.
All in favor? Okay, and then we have, I guess I missed celebrating successes. I don't see what, Mayor Gamble, do you know what it is?
I will certainly share a celebration of success. I think our celebration this morning would be relative to the tremendous effort that the Edmonton Oilers put forth, and we are now on to the opening of the free agency signing. So to see what the moves the Oilers are going to make this year, tremendous effort from them, and looking forward to the 2024 year. Is there a different celebrating success? I'll turn it to Dave Cross.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Pleased to welcome Ms. Krista Quinnell, our Director of Agriculture and Environmental Services. She's here today to share celebrating success for a recent program that was completed called Pond Days, and I'll turn things over to Krista for her to highlight that for you.
Make it better than mine.
So, good morning, Mayor and Council. So thank you for the opportunity this morning to celebrate the success of our Pond Days event, as well as the work of the individuals in the gallery behind me. So if you, my team wants to stand, and I mean, you can take a bow. That was a request from Jasper, but you don't have to. So our Pond Days event is an annual event that we run for grade 4 and 5 students in the county. This year we had 150 kids attend the event over 3 days at Chikaku Park, and that was for 3 schools, Graminia, Westview, and Duffield School. We had 12 volunteers from 4 different organizations, and the kids were able to learn about different topics such as watershed health, agriculture and the environment, aquatic invertebrates, water quality, and just have some fun out there as well. So this event wouldn't run without the dedication of our staff, and as you can see, it's almost a full department effort. So special thanks to Erin, who sits at our front desk most of the time, but on the side of her desk also has been organizing this event for a number of months now, and for all of our volunteers for the 3 days. So thank you guys. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay, well, moving on to the adoption of the Governance and Priority Committee minute meetings from June 18th, 2024. I will ask for a motion from committee member Christina Kowalski to adopt the June 18th, 2024 Governance and Priority Committee meetings.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor, sorry, I have to get a new habit, Kuchar Johnson. Pond Days, I hear, was fabulous from all the kids that were out there, so good for these guys. Next time I'm going. If I may, move the adoption of the June 18, 2024 Governance and Priorities Committee meeting minutes.
Thank you. Seeing no amendments, I will call for the motion. All in favor? Okay. Motion carried. Public input. It's now 9:06, and it's our agendas input section. The schedule, we have people come in for a 15-minute opportunity to provide comments. I know that we have some registered guests. If you want to come forward, that would be great. That is the Parkland Library, some members from the Parkland County Library Board. Or one member. Happy birthday yesterday, Sharon. Would you like to introduce yourself and so forth?
Thank you very much, Mayor and Deputy Mayor and Council, for the opportunity to come and speak to you very briefly this morning. So definitely I won't be taking up the 15 minutes. I know most of you know who I am, but just in case, I'm Sharon Cornelius, and I am currently the Vice Chair of the Parkland County Library Board. I'm speaking on behalf of Board Chair Sarah, and my fellow board members are here, as well as some of the staff members from Parkland County Libraries. A while ago, we heard that there was going to be a study done about what was happening in Wabamun with the buildings that are part and parcel of what now are part of Parkland County. We were very excited because the thought came right to the top of our head about what does this mean for our library, or what could it mean for our library in Wabamun. So the topic came up time and time again at our board meetings about, well, what would be best? Downstairs, upstairs, downstairs, upstairs. We went back and forth, back and forth. But some of the comments that really resonated time and time again is the value of having the library, if it was to move from where its current situation is to another location. The old village office for Wabamun would be ideal for it because it's at street level. It would provide visibility for the library. Access is another big one that the person needs to take into consideration because it would mean access for all. And some comments have come through about seniors saying that the door that they have now is heavy and the ramp is a little bit steep. And also access for anybody that has mobility issues would be better on the main floor. Then you wouldn't have to worry about an elevator or anything to go up and down. Also, it would be a newer building and less concern about maybe when the roof would leak or well, the floor would leak or anything would happen. Bathroom accessibility, there would be a lot of pluses for the library to potentially move over to the old county or the old village office. But time and time again, we came back to the main floor being the better option for the move, if a move was to take place. In my own mind, I put on their windows. At least you'd have some windows to look out if the library was up on the main floor. So we think that there's another good benefit for the library if it was to move over to the old village office, is that currently FCSS is in, Parkland County FCSS is in that building. That could really result in a hub being created in Wabamun for services and things that could, for the public. So we think that that would be a very good option for that. So we just thought it would be nice to bring some of the current views that have been discussed around the board table as to what we could be possible and what would really be great to be possible for the future of the library at Wabamun. Thank you very much for your time.
Yes, thank you for your time. That's, very interesting to hear what the conversation is around the board table and the workers and so forth. So thank you.
Any questions?
Just make a comment. Yeah, go ahead.
Rob, go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you for coming in. It's a little bit premature because we haven't even looked at the facilities review or report yet. We will later today, as you know. So we looked at, we discussed this obviously at the board meeting a few times, and we haven't even decided to move yet. So it's a little bit premature, but thanks for the input. And, the hub might be the best use of the building. It's obviously got to go through council and figure that out, so.
Thank you. I understand the whole process of how this has to happen, how it has to come before council, and council makes the decision as to what would happen down the road. But we knew that you were receiving the report today, so we thought we'd have our little 2 bits in on the report too as well, just in case you had any questions. And don't hesitate, we'd be more than willing to have a conversation anytime about what the future would be. So thank you.
Great, thank you for coming in today, and you're always welcome to come in and share information with council. And just for process, the purpose of our public input is for residents and guests to come in and share information with us, to which we will accept the information and discuss at this point in time. But we won't typically engage in any questions or debate or discussion at this time, just so you understand the process, so that we just are accepting in good faith this morning. So thank you for coming in and sharing.
Thank you very much to everyone.
Okay, well, moving right along, we are going to jump ahead to the seniors bus pilot project update. Mr. Cross, would you please introduce this item?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. We have Ms. Suzanne Merrills here with us this morning, Director of Community Services, and she's going to provide the committee with an update on the seniors bus pilot program. And I believe she has Ms. Sarah Nipshank, our FCSS coordinator, and Brandon Sidhu, our manager of programs and services, to assist her in the presentation. Thank you.
Well, welcome. We're pleased to have you attend today. So we're looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chairperson, Mayor and Council. I'm here today to present the update on our seniors bus program that we just started. So our pilot started in May of 2023 was when we approved the pilot project through council. And then in December 2023 is when we started running the bus. We did have some delays occur due to the wildfires in the west end of the county last season. So we had it previously anticipated to start the pilot that summer, but we did delay it till December based on what was happening in the region. June 2024, we saw is right now where we're doing our first review of the services that are being provided. And then in January 2025, we'll do a second review of the services based on some adjustments that we're going to propose that we're going to make to the program. And then our funding program does end in March of 2025. So our seniors bus overview, just to give you a brief overview of how it functions, we do have a bus with a capacity of 18 passenger bus. We've got 16 seats plus 2 wheelchair anchors in the bus. We have been providing information on the bus service through our website. Email contact has been created for the bus for residents who to contact us directly, as well as we provided a phone number to the Entwistle Hub that is fielding all of the information calls on the bus service. Our subsidized rate is $20 round trip per rider, Parkland County seniors residents are eligible, as well as Parkland County residents with short or long-term disabilities. All others are permitted to use the service, but they'll pay the full price of $40 round trip per rider. And those residing within a hamlet have the option of door-to-door service. So we're at a 6-month point right now. We've done an initial review of the program, the offerings that we're running with the bus. So our regular trips currently are running Wednesdays and Fridays from between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. They both leave the Entwistle Community Recreation Center. Wednesdays we head into Spruce Grove with a stop in Wabamun or any other hamlets along the way that we have residents that request a pickup. And then on Fridays is our south trip. We're going from Entwistle Rec Center down to the Drayton Valley. Again, sometimes we have had stops in Seba Beach or Tomahawk to pick up residents there. So we have, over the course of our 6 months, seen additional collection spots in Fallis, Wabamun, Seba Beach, and Tomahawk. We've also done a few special excursions at the request of our residents. So we have been providing the bus to access FCSS programs that are happening in the county, making those programs more accessible to those in the west to come in if there are tri-regional programs happening or conferences or such, then we're offering transportation through the bus for those programs. And then they did a field trip to the IMAX. They went and saw the movie and had lunch together, and it was a great opportunity for them to build connection as youth or as seniors. So here's the stats on our 6 months. We've had a total trip of 42 trips that we have run over the last 6 months. We've had a total of 122 riders. Our expenses and revenues are lower than where we thought we'd be at based on our budget. However, they are on par with each other. So our expenses and revenues, our actuals are both in the 30% range, which just shows we've had a slower uptake in the bus service, but we have maintained our expenses down as a result, and our revenue is staying in line with those expenses. In total, we have had 35 regular trips with 5 field trips offered. We've had 100 rides and 10 unique passengers riding this service. Oops. And the program, like I said, is gathering traction slowly, but has allowed for the opportunity to be flexible in our scheduling. We have been adapting the schedule and the routes based on what our riders are asking us, and we have been able to personalize the service a little bit more. The social interactions are aiding in the reduction of isolation and providing access to services, and it's helping some of our residents regain their independence. One example of this is an Entwistle resident who would otherwise be looking to hire a private service provider with currently costs them approximately $25 to $35 an hour and 70 cents a kilometer, making a dentist appointment in Spruce Grove from Entwistle, if we were basing it on about 150 kilometers, a return in 2.5 hours, approximately $170 to $190, which made it unaffordable for many seniors to do, and they were letting some of those healthcare appointments go by the way. Feedback has been positive in relation to comfort, routes, collection points, and riders, and they share that they are strongly satisfied with the price for the service. We've been advertising through various forums, quarterly newsletters, highway signs, posters in the community spaces, social media posts, messaging on monthly utility bills, postcards mailed out to residents, community calendar on our website, and attending events such as National Volunteer Week, Seniors Conference, Senior Center, and most recently it did participate in the Entwistle Parade for Canada Day. So interest from other users such as residents who are undergoing surgery and will require the service temporarily has been noticed. We've had those one-off calls where they're prepping for surgery and they're putting plans in place based on the service being available. So our next steps, we have heard from our regular users that many of them are going to be away over the summer and that they have caught up on all their medical appointments and they don't need the service as much. So based on that feedback, we are going to do a summer reduction in service. We're going to go down to 1 trip per week with 2 scheduled field trips throughout the summer, 1 to the U of A Botanic Gardens and 1 to the Pioneer Museum. And then in the fall, we're going to resume with twice weekly, and we're going to actually trial doing it on Tuesdays and Thursdays instead of Mondays or Wednesdays and Fridays. The ability to pivot has been a strength while growing, whether it is an inclement weather, a change in medical appointment times, or low attendance. We've been able to increase our exposure and ridership. As we continue to provide busing for FCSS-related programs and events, we continue to see an increase in desire for access to the bus. Over the summer, busing, we're going to actually utilize the bus off of the pilot, but utilize the bus service and the bus driver to support some of our youth programming occurring in the region, offering a couple special events over the summer for youth. And that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Well, thank you very much. Let's put the motion on the floor. So I will ask Committee Member Rob Weedman to put the motion forward, please.
Seniors bus pilot project update be received for information as presented.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions or comments? Okay, I'll start at that end. Councillor Burney, please.
Hi, Suzanne. Thank you for that report. So I did hear some comments from a couple of seniors when I was at the Holborn reunion there. And they were saying that they'd like to see trips to like the Chelsea Robinson Park, or not just to shopping or whatever. Sometimes they just don't need to shop all that much, and they'd like to go to different areas or tour around different places in Parkland County. And I see you've got the trip to the museum planned, and I forget what the other one was, but just some different places in Parkland County they'd love to ride around and see, just to get out and socialize and whatnot. So just suggestions. Do you have any plans for that?
Through Madam Chairperson to Councillor Burney. So we do have the 2 planned field trips, but residents can definitely reach out to us, and if there's enough interest, we kind of say if we've got about 4 people interested in a trip, we can make it happen.
Do you have how many riders would you say you have? Like I know you put 122 different, that's not 122 people, that's 122 riders, not all different. How many riders would you say are taking this service?
In terms of our regular weekly riders, we are seeing 10 unique users using the service. But then we recently have had a trip to the quilting show in Edmonton, and so we had I believe 12 to 14 on that bus. So the bus was pretty much full for those special events ones.
Councillor Kowalski.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Merrills, thank you for the report. Do we have a formal agreement with any of the other municipalities, for Seba Beach, Spring Lake? I understand that there was some deals sort of made for Seba Beach, and I'm wondering if you've had a chance to formalize that with the municipality. Thank you.
So at this time, we don't have any formal agreements with our partnering municipalities. We have put out the call that if they would like to, we are willing to have those conversations. With Seba Beach specifically, what we have said is that if they're the Seba Beach seniors, we have a mix of Parkland County residents that attend that, as well as Seba Beach residents. So that one's a little bit more unique than some of our other partnerships. So we have said if you're a Parkland County resident, then you get the subsidized rate. If you are not a resident, we did offer to Seba if they wanted us to do the subsidized rate, then we would bill them back for the difference. So we have made those agreements on a kind of a one-off basis based on the trips that are happening.
Thank you. Appreciate you taking care of that item.
And what are the rates?
Madam Chairperson, the rates are they're $20 as subsidized and then $40 round trip if they are not a Parkland County resident or do not qualify under the subsidy program.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Gamble?
Great, thank you very much for the information. I'll come at this from a bit of a different angle. I think this is a tremendous service, and it's something that when the greater region looks at things like aging in place, it makes it opportunities for seniors and those who need assistance to be able to travel. I think that's a wonderful opportunity. If I'm looking at roughly 122 riders over 6 months, over a year, we'd probably have roughly 250. The revenue that we would use as subsidizing the program would be about $5,000 cost to the residents using that service, subsidizing this service. My question would be related to if we are truly going to make an impact in seniors' lives, that maybe there's an opportunity for Parkland County to fully subsidize this type of service for seniors and those who are in need. Maybe not necessarily for field trips, but for things like groceries, medical appointments. I think there's a real opportunity for us to be leaders in this area. And perhaps if you can just share information, if you're aware of any other municipalities who have a fully subsidized service for seniors similar to what we're doing.
Through Madam Chair to Mayor Gamble. So when we initially set up the program, we did do a scan of our neighboring municipalities and others that operate a bus. There are a variety of different models out there. The most kind of common that we're seeing is actually just a subsidy program for those that need medical appointments. Some of the municipalities offer grants similar to our snow removal grant where residents are eligible to up to $300 to offset the cost of transportation to medical appointments. So those are some models. There are very few now that are actually running buses at this point because of the cost of the infrastructure for the buses. We made that decision because we inherited the bus. Had we not had a bus, we probably would have gone more of that grant route per resident.
Great, thank you for the information. I just think that's something for us to consider with if we want to provide service levels for our seniors. I think that's something that our colleagues should consider. Thank you.
Okay, moving on, Councillor Kabasiak.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the updated information here. Mayor Gamble alluded to some of the numbers. What's the total amount of this grant? And I know we used to get a seniors transportation grant, an assistance grant. I don't know if this is something in place. If you could just talk about that. And then you mentioned 10 unique users. If you could just touch on those 3 items.
Through Madam Chair to Councillor Kabasiak. So our grant that we have combined the grant that we received from the New Horizon grant, which I'm just pulling up the actual numbers for you. My computer is, with the Seniors Transportation Grant. The Senior Transportation Grant is what we actually offered out. We covered that. So that grant was $26,000, $12,000 of which goes to Town of Stony Plain for the accessible transit program. I'm sorry, my computer's not catching up fast enough. I can get you the actual numbers for the grant. It is around the $20,000 mark, but I can get you those actual numbers after the fact.
Okay.
Just the other questions, Madam Chair. I was asking this New Horizon grant, this replaces the Seniors Transportation Grant, the Assisted Transportation Grant, and also the 10 unique users.
So the New Horizon grant is an addition. So the Seniors Transportation Grant is something Parkland County offered outward. So it used to be an expense line in our budget. We would then fund other transit programs with it. So we have held back some of that money to fund this program. And then we combined it with the New Horizon grant, which is a grant from the federal government. And then our 10 unique users are all seniors accessing the bus. So they're paying the $20 per trip for access on the bus.
And I've had some of the comments when I was at the Blueberry Hall, the land use bylaw hearing. There was a lady there from the Seba Beach who lived in Parkland County, who lives in the Wabamun Falls area, I believe, and was asking how they could access, how they could get that type of support. And I guess, when we're offering this type of support, I know that there are seniors in the Graminia area. I know there are seniors in Mirror Lake area. I don't know how we might be able to provide some type of equity in a programming, because there are a lot of people. And I guess, it's when you start looking, it's an expensive proposition. You're saying $5,000 cost, but you got the bus, you got the driver, you got the operation costs. And we know that any social type of program like this doesn't pay for itself. You have to look at how you're contributing and where you're contributing. And I guess
I hear from people who want equity in the service. They're saying, well, if it's offered there, why can't, can I get this type of a service? My own mother, she lives at West Country Hearts, and if they want busing for programs or whatever, that the facility offers a bus there, and they pay when they want to go into those trips. Otherwise, there's just family who take elderly or neighbors who pick up groceries, take them to appointments, and if they want to go to special events, it's an event that family pitch in and they do those types of things. So people talk about equity in the program. How do we get equity? Because there's seniors who would like this service right across the county.
Through Madam Chair to Councillor Kowalczyk, definitely looking for equity across Parkland County. This was set up as a pilot to see how it would work, what the costing would be, with the intent that if we're seeing a need and it's working well, that we could then come back to council as our next phase would be to expand the program. We also are serving an area that isn't currently serviced by the ATS through Stony Plain, and I know that there are still some pockets down in the southeast corner of Parkland County that is not serviced now by either. If there is a group we would be willing to do, again, we can reach out and see about doing some one-off field trips with those groups. And then at a later date, when we come back to council with kind of our final review, we can put into that review process what it would cost to serve the entire county with a similar type service and the different options and models we have for that.
Madam Chair, is that something that you might do when the pilot program ends? Would you look at something like that and just bring that information back to council as a whole? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Okay, is there any further questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, I call the motion. All in favor? Okay, carried. Moving on, are we ready to for our 9:30 appointment? Okay. Mr. Cross, could you please introduce the nature policy framework update?
Sure, be happy to, Madam Chair. With us, we have Ms. Krista Connell back with us again, Director of Agriculture and Environmental Services. Joining her is Mr. Guy Greenaway, who's the Executive Director with the Corvus Center for Conservation Policy, and they're here to provide an update on the nature policy framework. And with that, I will turn things over to Krista and Guy for their presentation. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Cross. So thank you for having us here today to give an update on our work on ESA conservation in the county. I am going to turn it over to Guy Greenaway. He has been supporting this project for us, and he is coming in live from Calgary with the Corvus Center for Conservation Policy.
Thanks, Krista. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you. Thanks, Guy.
Great. I'm just going to do a quick background recap on what you guys have already heard about the background of the project, and then I will move on to the quick items around the update. And Krista is going to be my finger on the button, so I'll just say next when I need to move to the next slide. So next, please. So starting with the direction and the context next. We were looking at the marching orders next, directly from the Parkland County Strategic Plan next. The goal was to develop a policy framework that ensures protection of environmentally significant areas next. And the priority strategy out of that was review and update the county's framework on environmentally significant areas to support responsible management of natural assets and amenities next. And so the key terms that come out of that are policy, protection, ESAs, responsible management, and natural assets. Next. So looking at the existing policy, next. You have a number of key policies that are in place that relate to this. The Municipal Development Plan encourages the conservation of ESAs and high-value wetlands with various tools. Conservation by design and biophysical impact assessment are required. Road networks may be required to be as far away as possible, and designated OHV trails and parks located a sufficient distance away. Your biophysical assessment policy says that it may require development to avoid and set back from ESAs. Your reserves policy requires the dedication of ER and ERE for environmentally sensitive lands and suggests consideration of other conservation tools if the land does not meet those requirements. And environmental policy and procedures lists ESA protection as a management objective, only requires what is legislated at higher levels, and has some broad feature-specific statements, for example, around protecting water quality. And then the biodiversity and county lands policy prioritizes county lands in ESAs for naturalization and restoration project as resources allow. And your Parks and Recreation and Culture Master Plan suggests use of things like conservation easements and designation of new conservation parks to protect ESAs. So overall, there's a number of policies that you point to, but there is a lot of use of soft language, suggestions, encouragement may require that sort of thing. Next. So the conservation strategy that we next are laying out here, as we've talked about again, the previous two workshops. Next, please. Moving from identification of ESAs to actual conservation of ESAs. So identification is simply noting their importance, cataloging them, mapping them. Next. And then the conservation is a more action-oriented step. It's the maintaining their identified values. This is where restrictions and requirements can come in and move beyond simply identification. Next. We talked in the two workshops about the 21st century conservation, where we're looking at systems, not just pieces. We're looking at humans and nature, not separating them. A lot of focus on the resilience of these systems, or the resilience of the county and the community, being more development aware, and very critically being focused on the function of these natural systems. Next. So the idea here is that a natural feature has a function that provides a service. Next. So to illustrate that, we can think of the feature as the things, the parts, the stuff that we can point at. The function is what those features do, whether we're around or not. And then the service is the value that people derive from that function. Next. And it may be logical that you would focus on the natural features because they're in the ESAs, or focus on the services because that's why we care. Next. But the reality is the focus should be on the function, because that's where the management actions can have an impact. That's where we can apply restrictions and prescriptions and actually make a difference in terms of maintaining the feature and the services that we derive from those features. Next. So the general approach that we talked about was three things: restriction, where we're saying no to things that come forward that are not appropriate. Next. And then guideline, that's saying yes, but, where the proponent's suggestion, it meets the needs of the county, but there are certain guidelines and requirements. And then next. The last one and the least used one, innovation, which we're describing as saying no, but, where you're identifying something that a proponent has brought forward that doesn't meet the requirements, but if an innovative approach were to be taken, that could receive an approval if those innovative approaches serve the needs, the environmental and conservation needs of the county. Next. So the framework concept, like we described for you in the previous two workshops, next, has 5 pillars. The first one being giving direction, so that's the goals, the policies, the scope, the objectives. Next. The second is ensuring coordination with the legislative hierarchy that surrounds it, the policy links within the county, and providing clarity on those roles. Next. And the third pillar is really enabling tools, proactive tools, reactive tools, making sure that they're understood, making sure that they're resourced and available, and then providing options. This is the no but area, where we're looking for opportunities where actions, proponents, proposals come forward that can contribute to the natural systems of the county. And that's where the innovation and incentives need to be put forward so that there's clarity there. And then the fifth one is clarity overall. Just what are the requirements? What are the consequences? Who are the authorities? And what are the opportunities, so that it's not just around saying no to certain things. Next. So where this fits, you have your municipal development plan leading to your land use, or coordinating with your land use bylaw. Next. And this sort of sits in the middle of them, taking direction from the municipal development plan and then some feedback with the land use bylaw. Next. And then from that framework leads to the action plans, more detail on administrative directions, referencing existing engineering standards. So it provides that coordination mechanism. Next. So these are the draft goals. We had presented these at a previous workshop, and we're still We're still working through them a little bit, but you'll notice that with the goals, the idea is to use that service concept, maintaining the functions of the natural systems so that they can provide these services. So ESAs are available to anchor those water conservation, disaster mitigation, habitat, biodiversity provision, those wildlife movement functions that are needed across the county. Similarly, surface water and groundwater resources are available to provide potable water, disaster mitigation, pollution filtration. Next. Wetlands are able to provide the habitat, retain stormwater, filter pollution. All of those functions are either maintained or enhanced. Similarly, riparian areas are able to perform their functions and provide those across the county. Next. The forest canopy and vegetation cover across the county provides that natural rural character, which is something that comes out a lot in the consultation, wildlife habitat, disaster mitigation, and then wildlife species in the county are able to move in order to achieve their habitat access, migration, seasonal movement, dispersal needs. So these are the very high level goals. Next. As we were doing this, we came across, so that's the end of the recap, we came across a number of challenges, and we identified 3 specific ones that we wanted to reference for you. The first one, next. I guess next. What I call the nature policy scavenger hunt. Next. So this is the idea that when a proponent comes forward, they may be quite challenged to try and find all of the policy that relates to conservation of natural features, conservation of those systems. You have a number of policies that speak to the conservation of natural features, but they speak to them regardless of their proximity to ESAs. And so it might be in areas around transportation, planning development, technical guidelines, different places that you have to look in order to understand all of the requirements and all of the goals that the county has around nature conservation. Next. And why don't we go to the next one, Krista? The second is that ESAs are like an anchor to your county's entire nature network, and they're not isolated pockets. So you have natural assets, and your work on that front is going to show these spread across the county, and requiring different types and different levels of guidance. So back to what we were talking about in the workshops, this is sort of the 1980s versus the 2020s conservation. When we focus on ESAs only, it tends to lead to that sense that development cannot happen anywhere near or in and around ESAs, and that conservation can't happen outside of ESAs, as opposed to thinking this in a more system-based perspective. Next. Next. And then the third one is that a lot of the innovative options that we're going to articulate in the framework, they speak to your broader land base. So ideally, you'd want to have proponents able to use all of these tools like conservation reserves, easements, transfer development credits, whatever you enable, to apply them wherever they might work. And similarly, anything that you are doing proactively, like conservation funding, programming, education, et cetera, be able to apply that beyond where just exactly where your ESAs exist. Next. So it sort of came about as we were trying to name the document. Next. We had all sorts of names that we were throwing back and forth, and it sounds like a small thing, but it really does reflect what this is intended to do. ESA conservation policy and natural systems conservation policy. Next. And so we're proposing that it be called the nature policy framework to reflect that this is policy. It reflects nature in a number of ways that you want to try and maintain that across the county, and that this framework provides coordination, it provides reference to a number of other areas, but it becomes a one-stop shop in terms of understanding your policy related to nature conservation. Next. So the policy document itself. Next, the contents that we're suggesting. Next. First of all, the context, so the role of the framework, that regulatory hierarchy beyond the county into the province, into the region, the strategy, or sorry, in reference to existing policy, the strategy part of it, speaking to the vision, the approach, the goals, a number of the pieces that we've talked about in the workshops and that I recapped. And then the specific policies and being very direct with the policies around ESAs, water bodies and courses, vegetation and soils, significant landforms and natural areas. Next. And then applying the policies. So speaking very directly to planning and development, the technical studies and reports that are required, specific practices, which may involve taking some of those existing policies and bringing them into this one to for efficiency's sake, and may involve just referencing them. But again, you'd have this one-stop shop to look to that. And then a section, a very dedicated section on tools and approaches, all of the different tools that you do use or could use, and being very clear about them. Environmental reserves, sustainability committee, conservation easements, conservation design, but actually articulating that in a very clear way so it's understood what they are and what they mean for Parkland County and how you would use them. And then a very specific section probably tied to the tools, where we speak to the innovation components, where what is the purpose of looking at these innovative opportunities and what are the benefits? And then rather than just asking proponents to try and come up with things in a blank slate, prime that pump by saying, these are some of the approaches, these are some of the innovations that the county would be looking to try and support the conservation of those systems, the conservation of those features. Next. And then implementation, the more direct reference to administrative directives and procedures, the creation of annual plans, how this could be funded with very clear investment planning, enforcement and insurance, education, partnership, stewardship. A glossary section, hopefully, that can reconcile all of the environmental terms that you have in your various different policies. And then this last one isn't so much contents, but just a note that this would relate very directly back and forth to the land use bylaw, speaking to overlays, districts, reciprocal clauses, and making sure that they're coordinated and have reference to each other. Next. So here's an example of the policy approach, not necessarily how the contents would be laid out, but how you could think of the way a particular instance would follow through this policy framework. So establish a goal, for example, the ability of the county's wetlands to provide habitat, retain stormwater, et cetera, that one that I showed you. Next. Then the next piece would be creating objectives under that goal. Wetland loss in the county is reversed. Next. And then identifying the requirements, so the biophysical assessment, for example. Next. The application of that policy to planning and development. So, for example, ASPs and conceptual plans must demonstrate how wetland loss will be mitigated in support of no net loss. Again, these are examples of how we might be able to phrase that. Next. And then detail the tools that can support those goals. So, for example, the county will take environmental reserve wherever possible to protect wetlands and their function. Next. And then also identify the innovation and incentives opportunities. So, for example, you might say this tool, in describing a particular tool, will be deemed an acceptable approach for reversing wetland loss within development plans. Again, that's not the exact wording, but it's intended to give the idea of how that might lay out. Next. So timeline and engagement. Next. Engagement. we've done presentations and discussions with the Agricultural Service Board, the Sustainability Committee. I think there was actually even one other committee that Krista might have presented to that I forgot to put on here. And then ongoing discussions and exchanges back and forth with your folks who are working on the MDP, working on the land use bylaw to make sure there's connection and coordination. And Krista and her team have been doing a lot of that. Next. And then in terms of timeline, what we're looking to do, administration and Corvus will work between, say June, but now July, to August to finish the draft and come back to council with the draft in the fall. Next. And then a final document before council for approval before year end. And that is the summary of the update.
Thank you very much, Mr. Greenaway. There is a motion before us. I would ask Committee Member Mayor Gamble to put the motion forth, please.
Sure, thank you, Madam Chair. I will move that the Nature Policy Framework update be received for information as presented. Thank you. And I have no questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Do we have any questions or comments from the committee? Okay.
Madam Chair, thank you. I know that we've had our Community Sustainability Committee engaged in this, looking at comments, and that the framework that Guy helped the committee work through was, you know, you can have this but, or you can't have that but. And look at, that was a good exercise, and I heard some feedback from committee members saying that that logically, you know, helped them put into context what it is that we were trying to achieve with this policy. So I think it provides a good framework. I'm pleased to see the amount of effort that has gone into this and how we'll look at applications differently. We talk about area structure plans and conceptual plans now must demonstrate how wetland loss must be mitigated in support of no net loss, and that we're not looking at ESAs in isolation, but they're part of the county's broader framework. And so what happens in one area is going to, you know, domino out and have other impacts, positive and or negative, in other areas. So I know I've had background with residents with concern about how they value environmentally significant areas, how the county inventories them, and what we can do to move forward to make sure that we have a stronger management plan to protect this for the county residents. So I think it will go a long way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Weidman?
Yeah, thank you. This is a fairly complex issue when it comes to ESAs and conservation. And, you know, with the complexities of development nowadays, I think we really have to be careful on how what we do here. Listening to it, there's a fair amount to it. I need to be able to explain it to developers very simply, and especially single developers like private developers, private landowners. So I really hope that we take our time with this. You know, I'm all in favor of protecting wetlands and ESAs, but I don't want to make it too complicated because it's already a bad enough process for developers right now. I don't feel sorry for developers, but I'm just saying it's a complicated process, and we need to make it very simple. We need to make an environment that planning helps the developer save ESAs in wetlands and not just leave it to the developer to come back with plans. And it's not like that right now. The developer, he might have some ideas, he may not, but we don't offer a lot of suggestions from what I see. So I'll just leave it at that.
Councillor Kowalski?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Greenway, for the presentation, and Ms. Quinnell. I'm really pleased to see the direction that we're going in. The more that we can explain how we want to protect them and how that impacts all our policies and how they intermesh is going to be very, very useful as we move forward into the next decades. So thank you for the work, and I look forward to seeing the draft in September.
Thank you. Are there any further questions or comments? Seeing none, I call the motion. All those in favor? The motion is carried. We have an appointment at 10 o'clock, but I don't think they're here. So I would, I'm going to call a 15-minute break, or actually, let's not go 15 minutes. We'll be reconvene here at 10:10 is what we'll say 10:05. Let's do that.
We need 13 minutes, Madam Chair.
So that would be 10, yeah. No, 10:10. No, 10:05, sorry. Could you please introduce this item?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of committee, I'll welcome our delegation up to the presentation table here. This morning we have Miss Grace Horsfield, who used to be a planner with us back in the day, spent lots of time here, was a mover and shaker in the Planning and Development Services Department. Drago Stikulescu and Mario Charpentier, who are here representing Edmonton Minor Soccer Association. And they're going to provide a presentation on a proposed indoor sports center that they're looking at, and be pleased to answer any questions that the committee may have. Thank you.
Okay. Welcome.
If you could just hit the middle, oh, you got it, thanks.
Good morning, everybody. As we've been introduced, I'm Grace. This is Mario and Dragos. Edmonton Minor Soccer, as you all know, many years ago acquired the lands on the old Chola dry landfill site. And on those lands, they developed many soccer fields, which are fully used all through the summertime. But what's happening now is there is a drastic fall off from the amount of children that can be helped and accommodated all are over Northern Alberta. Whitecourt, we have teams from Whitecourt. Red Deer come up, even though they have their own facility. They play in our program. And all of Edmonton, Spruce Grove, Stony Plain, and a lot of those children in Spruce Grove and Stony play through their rep programs in the EMSA program, and a lot of the House League do as well, because there are not enough children in the outlying areas. They can put together a team, but not a league or a program for the older age groups. So last year it became critical with the amount of indoor fields that were available to accommodate children. And EMSA, as the parent organisation, as the umbrella for all of these groups, we're going out to various organisations, the Scottish Society, St Albert's Service Credit Union, out to Try Leisure, to use fields to keep the programme alive, but still could not accommodate all the children. So a number of years ago, Edmonton had a dream that maybe on this site, they could develop an indoor soccer arena. Some people call it a bubble, some people have a building. And so EMSA then started to look at how they could achieve this and how they could facilitate it. So fast forward a couple of years, last year they were able to purchase from the landowner 15 acres, which is immediately north of the access road, which is north of the property that Parkland County owns. And so they purchased that from the landowner with the view of building an indoor soccer complex. And that's where we are today. We've met with lots of members of the provincial government who are excited about that. And in fact, we just received an invite from the Minister's office to put forward an application for their 2025 capital programme grant, which is their big grant, not one of the smaller grants. So we just received that last week, was it? It's only an invite, but at least we're invited to the party. So, so that's mainly our overview. And Dragos, if you want to, the button is in the middle. Dragos can give you an idea of the numbers of children that we were able to facilitate and the number of children that we could not facilitate for the indoor program. So.
Thank you again for having us this morning. I'm going to bring back the idea of the presentation that we brought in front of the council here last year. If you remember, we presented all the outlining reasons why we need, as an organization, to have this added indoor facility. Basically, looking at our numbers, only about between 50 and 60% of the young players that enjoy soccer during the outdoor season have room to play indoor. So every year we struggle come September with the decision, who do we send home and tell them, I'm sorry, you cannot participate this year because we simply have no room in the existing indoor facilities in Edmonton and surrounding areas. So right now we are at the first come, first serve system. We open up registration for children August 1st, and by the time September 1st hits and everybody's back from vacation, all the teams are full, and we have to tell them, I'm sorry, maybe we'll find a solution next year, but this year we're not able to accommodate you. The limit on space impacts not only the number of games we are able to provide them during a regular organized league, but also the amount of practices that they can attend. Some teams don't even practice at all because they cannot secure gym time. Right now, the indoor space available only allows us to organize the actual league games. For practices, every team struggles to find some space in some gym or a small warehouse where they can try and enjoy the sport of soccer. We believe it's not conducive to better development and helping these kids stay in the sport for a long time. We see a lot of players dropping out. By the same token, some others are taking on the sport, but because we don't have a solid infrastructure that allows us to keep them engaged in the sport throughout the year, we're running into a lot of problems.
And just to give you an idea of numbers, as was in the package that you have, we're not talking about one or two teams. We're talking about last year, we were able to accommodate 13,000 children. And not just from the city of Edmonton, but for all over Parkland County, from Fort McMurray, from Whitecourt, Red Deer, all of the small communities between Red Deer and Edmonton. They were the children that we could accommodate. And so that's why instead of calling it the EMSA facility, it's going to be called the Northern Alberta, because really, even Fort McMurray, we're helping all of the children in the Northern Alberta area. So cap in hand to you, what we are looking for from Parkland County is we're not coming to you at this point in time. We're not coming to ask you to fund this building, to give us money out of your coffers that you have right now. However, what we need is Parkland County's support with regards to development costs, i.e. levies, any levies that are owed on the lands, development permitting fees, and anything else that is going to enhance the development of the property. So that's our request to you today. We will come forward and also as well to let you know from this point forward, we did not want to approach any of your staff with regards to this proposal without all of you being aware of exactly what it is that we are wanting to do. I know how that works. Yeah. So any questions?
Do we have any questions? Thank you for that presentation. Do we have any questions or comments? Councillor Kowalski?
Thank you very much. Appreciate seeing all of you again. That's great. Do you have any idea what the total project might cost you at this point? I'm sure that if you're looking towards doing an application, you're refining those numbers every day.
With regards to development costs right now, thank you. With regards to development costs right now, we are hopeful in the $20 million range. Yeah. And it could go as high as 25, but right now we're hoping between the 15 and $20 million range.
So that's the one big building that you showed us with how many fields in it? I'm sorry, six or eight?
Six fields. Off again. 6 fields is our dream. However, if we have to scale it back through the process, the minimum amount of fields that we can do is 4, but hopefully it will be 6. Yeah.
I'm just going to take a step backwards, and I would like to put this motion on the floor before the committee. I will ask Councillor Kowalski to put it forward, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, that the Edmonton Minor Soccer Association, EMSA, Northern Alberta Regional Indoor Service Sports Centre presentation we received for information as presented.
Thank you. Councillor Kubasiak.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I was waiting for you to say subject lands. I wanted to hear that. I really wanted to hear that, and maybe you still will. But this is so exciting for Parkland County. You know, back in the days when the landowner had approached Parkland County and said, here's an opportunity, with former councillor Pat Brennan, Dr. Brennan saying, here's an opportunity, and the need is there, the interest is there, the support is there, the location is amazing. And this is so exciting for Parkland County and what this is going to do for our community, to have a facility of this capacity and, you know, in North America. And I guess maybe just comment, you talked about this being the largest, the largest in North America. So you know, your approach with your background and working with your association here, I just see this as a win-win all around and very exciting news, and pleased that you're here today to follow up and you know, put this into the larger Parkland County realm of what's available for us.
And in answer to Councillor Kubasiak's comments, we believe, we're researching this right now, if you take into consideration the outdoor fields and then the indoor complex, we will probably be the biggest soccer complex in North America. But we're researching that right now, right? Yeah, but and that is huge, because sometimes you will get a building for an indoor facility, and sometimes you will get outdoor fields, but you don't very often get the magnitude of this, the number of outdoor fields and the number of indoor fields, all on the same piece of land. No.
Councillor Weidman?
Yeah, thanks for the information on this. I was around when that got dedicated. The land that you want there is, explain the location exactly.
So when you come off 231 Street and you go into the access, the southern, so the first access goes into Denny Andrews' house, and the second one goes into the outdoor soccer fields. So when you go on that access, it's the lands immediately on the right-hand side, on the north side of the access. The 15 acres that Parkland County owns is on the south side of the access. Yeah.
Some of that land was, I thought, was undevelopable. A whole bunch of utilities through it. Has that been rectified, or is that it's all open now, or?
Not that we're aware of. We've done some geotechnical work out there with regards to the first location that was chosen for the location of the building. We did a lot of geotechnical work, and other than maybe some illegal loads that were put in there long before the dry landfill site, when it was just a low area. Other than that, maybe it's virgin land. And so, other than some utilities that come into the site, there are no utilities. There is a registered road plan that's on the land, which you're aware of, that comes in off 16A. But I'm not aware that there are any major utilities that run through the property.
Okay, there's been no fill in there or anything in that particular piece? Okay. Air-supported structure, or?
So, Dragos, do you want to talk about the air one opposed to the industrial one? Yeah.
We actually looked at two options. One is the air-supported dome, and the other one is a light industrial building on an aluminum frame with fabric cover. And at the end of the day, the reality is the air-supported dome has a shorter lifespan than the light industrial one. Our concern is that even though that would cost less at the front end, it will have higher maintenance cost. And one of our main concerns is to try and keep our registration fees as low as possible. The reality is 80% of our revenue right now comes from registration fees. So in order to maintain a more expensive building, it will mean that we will have to increase our rates, which we are very reluctant. So the light industrial facility, it will be a little bit more expensive at the front end, hence the $20 million mark, but it has a lifespan of 50 years for the aluminum frame and 30 years for the envelope. So allows us to spread our cost over a longer period of time and maybe not play around with our registration fees that much.
Also utilities, Dragos, like for heating? Yeah, the heating, we're hearing from the Scottish Society who have the dome on Highway 2, just at the end of, on the south end of Edmonton. The Scottish Society are struggling right now with regards to heating costs. And we've been told that the heating costs for the structure that we intend to build, because of the double installation on it, is going to be drastically lower. And as Drago says, on an ongoing basis, that allows us to keep our fees lower.
Mayor Gamble?
Great, thank you for the presentation and information that you've shared with council today. It is much appreciated. Just looking at the representation of the EMSA related to Edmonton and as well the Northern Alberta Regional Indoor Soccer Centre presentation. So this scope is actually larger than just Edmonton itself. I see many of the letters of support you've received from the Indigenous Sports Council, Spruce Grove, Sherwood Park, St. Albert, Fort Saskatchewan. I guess my question relates to, it's more related to Northern Alberta in scope, and to what extent is registration related to Parkland County residents? So if there are teams from around this area, is it a center that will encompass?
So in answer to your question, a lot of the children in and around Parkland County, so a lot of the children in Parkland County have in their community leagues up at Muir Lake, they have small soccer programs just to facilitate the younger children playing soccer. Once the children start to progress, so once they come from like the under 5s, under 7s, under 9s, and they want to start playing the big game, they then tend to gravitate towards Spruce Grove and Stony Plain to come and play Drayton Valley. And they start to gravitate to the centres to go on to teams that have higher levels or that have more children playing, so they can then be part of a team to play on rather than just an individual player. Because the older the children get, there may be a wild guess, there may be 10 under 7 teams playing in a league in the outlying areas, but when it gets to under 11, there's maybe 3, and you can't put a program together for 3. However, under the EMSA umbrella, they then come into EMSA, and then they field their teams through EMSA. So exact numbers, I'm sorry, I don't have them, but that's how the progression grows.
That answers my question. In effect, our Parkland County residents play in the urban centers who, when they get to different levels, of course, are well represented within the EMSA as well as the Northern Alberta.
100%.
Do we have any further comments or questions? Councillor Barry.
Good morning. Thank you for that presentation. Very excited to see the beautiful game live in Parkland County, right? It's, yeah. So I do have a question, though. Currently, on the land that you have, the fields, there's 26 outdoor soccer fields there right now. Is that correct? I believe it's 26, 27, if I remember.
It's 15 or 16.
Oh, okay.
There's 15 that are built and played on right now. Yep.
So those stay, correct? You're just adding a facility, so we will have indoor and outdoor. Well, I'm just in full support of this, and yeah, we'll cheer you all the way. Can hardly wait to go see you when it's open and watch the kids in there. Perfect location, just really great to see this all come to light. So thanks.
And I'm proud of Parkland County because I worked here for so long. I'm proud that Parkland County is going to play such a big part in this. And the fact that it, as I say, it won't be called the EMSA facility. It will be called the Northern Alberta facility in Parkland County. And for that to, like, we're not the poor cousins anymore, we're the big guys.
Councillor Kowalski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just got our Discover Parkland up, and I'm trying to figure out which lot it is, because I find, the only one I can find that's 15 acres near that is right on Highway 16A. Is that correct? Okay, I know which one it is. Okay. Yeah, it shows one right away. That's all it shows. Right away.
If I may, Sally?
Councillor Bernie?
Councillor Wiedemann, you're asking about the utility lines. Those are further in Zone 8, further south. So this is the perfect location there. They won't have any problems with that location.
Well, thank you so much for coming in. That's a really great presentation. So we have a motion on the floor. Those in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, moving on, we have a 10:30 appointment, Wabamun Facilities Plan presentation. Mr. Cross, could you please introduce this item?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the committee, pleased to welcome Mr. Pierce Shuchuk from Nichols Applied Management, and he's here this morning to share the Wabamun Facilities Review Report. As the committee is aware, Wabamun became part of Parkland County in 2021, and this included a variety of facilities in various states of physical condition. County staff have been making use of these facilities in various ways to deliver services to county residents in Wabamun and further west. Purpose of this plan was to look at a variety of factors, including current usage, operational capital lifecycling costs, as well as future impacts and needs, and provide some recommendations on how we could deliver the services we need in the fewest buildings possible in the most efficient, effective manner. The report presented today will provide some recommendations for a committee's comments and thoughts, and then administration will go away and come back in the fall with some options for moving forward for council's discussion and decision. And with that, I'll turn things over to Mr. Shuchuk for the presentation. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Let me begin by apologizing for not being there in person. I'm recovering from some little gift my children gave me, and I thought it best to protect the group. So here I am on camera. I'm joined by my colleague, Dan Schiffner, who's actually in Michigan this morning. And so we're both signing in. Thank you for accommodating that. We prepared a comprehensive report for Parkland County. This morning, we have a summary presentation of the key findings that Dan's going to run you through. We look forward to any of your questions and comments. Please feel free to interrupt as Dan's moving through the piece. With that, I'll turn it over to Dan.
Good morning, everyone. Good to be here. I, on the other hand, make no apologies for not being there because I'm having a great time in Michigan. But thanks for accommodating me remotely, much appreciated. Also, apologies in advance. I'm currently working from a house that has 3 pets and 3 children in it. So if noises come up, I'll do my best to work around that. Anyway, we will dive, I guess, directly into the presentation here. I guess I will just, probably best if I just say move to the next page and we'll proceed in that fashion. Yeah. So for this review, we did look at 5 different facilities within the community of Wabamun. So there was the Civic Center / Municipal Office Building, the Jubilee Community Hall, there was the old Fire Hall, the old water treatment plant / storage building, and also the Public Works Building, which included both the main shop area, and then also there is a yard with an additional storage building on the other side. So both the shop and the storage. So our approach for this project was, at the beginning, we did take a building tour, so physically visited each building, took a poke around inside and outside. There was also fairly extensive engagement with stakeholders. That includes both existing users of the facilities as well as some elected officials. And there was also some document review. So the life cycle and capital requirements of each building was earlier completed by ISL engineering that was provided to us. So that did go into a review. Also took a look through the Wabamun area vision plan, as well as a variety of other public data, just to inform our analysis and recommendations. If you want to go ahead and move on to the next page. So I thought it best if we just started off with a quick overview of how the buildings or facilities are currently being used. So the Civic Center is very lightly used at the moment. The only existing regular user is FCSS, so Family Community Support Services. And they use it for some office space, as well as the NeighborLink food pantry storage. Otherwise, a lot of unused space in the building. In the Jubilee community, or the Jubilee Hall, is also used by FCSS. There's an after-school program that runs out of there on alternate afternoons. It is also used by the library, which is situated, basically takes up most of the basement of the hall. The community library is located there. Also, quite well used by publics for event rentals, so weddings, funerals, etc. The old fire hall, also quite extensively used by a number of municipal departments. Enforcement Services essentially has a satellite office in the building with a regular staff member and vehicle. Horticulture / agriculture services does make regular use of that. There's often a seasonal staff member that basically is based out of the building. Also a fair amount of storage of equipment and supplies. Fire services does still make use of the building, really only for the purpose of storing the boat that goes into the lake, is stored there over the winter. The old water treatment plant is currently used by the utilities team, primarily for storage, and largely there is one piece of equipment called the sewer flusher, which apparently is a very large, heavy piece of equipment, and it is regularly held at the building. Finally, the Public Works building, again used by a couple of different municipal departments. The roads team and the parks team both store a variety of tools and equipment and vehicles, both in the main shop, in the yard, as well as the storage shed throughout. So that's an overview of how the buildings are currently being used. If you want to move on to the next slide, please. So here's an overview of what it currently is costing to maintain these buildings. And this includes both your regular maintenance, so we're talking, yard upkeep, utilities, et cetera, as well as the annualized capital costs. So, some of the buildings may require repair to the roof, which is anticipated in the next few years. Anyway, so all of those are kind of wrapped into, here's an annual cost. As one would expect, bigger buildings cost more. A 5,000 square foot building is going to cost more to maintain than a 2,000. So in addition to the annual costs, we also broke it down on a per square foot basis, just to kind of get a sense of the relative value provided at each building. In the column far to the right, you'll notice a net annual cost, and you might rightly wonder, okay, what is this? So what we attempted to do here was capture the value of the building in terms of what it provides for the municipal departments. So, for instance, Enforcement Services runs a satellite office in the old fire hall. So that provides savings in terms of reduced driving time from Stony Plain each day. Yeah, and so basically reduced, wages, reduced, vehicle costs, just in terms of moving around and having access to that. So just kind of a high level estimate trying to account for that. So as we go through, you can see obviously, Civic Center and Jubilee Hall, fairly large buildings, cost estimates. They are the most expensive buildings to run. If you look at the cost per square foot, it kind of changed. The little old water treatment plant, which is a very small building, actually costs quite an amount on a per square foot basis. And some of the others start to drop. So we can go more into that later. I'm not going to spend 20 minutes going through each of the numbers, but we did have a look at all those factors. If you want to move to the next slide, please. As I said, we also did a fair amount of engagement, conducted 17 interviews with, around 20 different people, just talking about the buildings and the community and how it's all being used. So this just is a very quick summary on this slide of some of the key takeaways. So what I thought were some of the more important messages and the messages I was hearing on a repeated basis. So Wabamun is centrally located within the county. Which makes it well suited for a satellite office or operations branch in terms of, having a space to situate or access tools and equipment. It was also often brought up that there's a relative lack of amenities or services in the community, in particular, health amenities and recreation amenities were brought up several times each. With the planned investment into the waterfront area, several respondents talked about a desire to draw visitors into the town center. So away from the campground, away from just the water, but bringing them kind of into the heart of the community. It was also brought up several times that both the Civic Center and Jubilee Hall have symbolic value to the residents. So they have value and meaning beyond the intrinsic economic value. And that the Civic Center in particular really served as a community hub prior to the dissolution of the village. Also brought up, and we will get more into this down the road, was the Wabamun Public Library and the very significant role it plays in community life, and also plays a role in drawing a fair number of visitors into the community. So I guess really sum that up, I would say from engagement, I said there's really an overall desire to see a more vibrant town center with shops and services, and that the Civic Center, hall, and library could play a central role in that. All right, if we want to move on to the next slide, please. So probably some information on this slide that you're, living and working there, you're familiar with, but just wanted to clear, we did take a look into this and factored into our recommendation. So in terms of the demographics of Wabamun and Parkland County, looking at the population over the last 10 years, and this is typical of a lot of, the more, rural area, smaller communities. Population growth has lagged that of the province. See that Wabamun itself has actually, gone down in population ever so slightly over the last 10 years. An interesting takeaway that I did come across is if you look at the chart, that might be kind of tough to read, but at the bottom of the slide there, and it basically breaks the population down into different age groups. And what I found is there's actually a relatively high number of both children and seniors. So basically under the age of 18 or over the age of 65 within Wabamun. Now, what this can mean for a community is it can result in a high dependency ratio. So that means a relatively few number of, working age adults and relatively high number of other individuals that require additional supports and services. So something to take, I think, into consideration when looking at the needs of the community. All right, next slide, please. Looking at the current environment, the market conditions within Wabamun, as we saw in the next slide, there has not been a lot of population growth. Also not a lot of, commercial activity in the community recently. Overall, this has kind of come across as, well, there's not a lot of demand for real estate right now. Looking at the Wabamun area vision, which again, you're likely quite familiar with, there's a plan for significant growth in the community with, potential for, dramatically increasing the number of residences and, possibly businesses in the community, which all suggests that in the future, there may how much higher demand for real estate. So low demand now, likely higher demand in the future. So that was very much on our minds when looking at our findings and recommendations. And if we could move to the next slide, please. So as I said, we'll come back to the library. That was one thing we found, again, through the engagement with the discussions. There was a lot of interest in, I would say, maintaining and supporting the library. So it was felt just to provide a lot of value to the community. So currently it's situated in the basement of Jubilee Hall. Those that work at the library is, happy with its arrangement. It's working well, but there is perhaps the opportunity to move it into a, bigger, better facility and make use of. So what came up was, moving it to the Civic Center, which, as we saw early in the presentation, the Civic Center is felt to have symbolic value to the residents, the potential for playing a central role in community life, but currently is not extensively used. So could we move the library to the Civic Center? So we took a look into that. So the first question that kind of came up with us, well, if we do move it, do we move it to the main floor of the Civic Center or to the basement? So there are some pros and cons with either scenario. So if you move it to the main floor, it sets up very well for accessibility. It's currently accessible. Also, improved aesthetics. It's got nice big windows to people walking in, as opposed to if it were in the basement, potentially now you would have users of the library walking into a largely empty, unused main floor and then making their way downstairs. So something to be aware of. The main con of moving it to the main floor is that it's not really set up to accommodate the weight of a library. So there would need to be some structural upgrades made. And you can see at the bottom of the slide, a quick study was done. An independent engineering firm was brought in to provide some cost estimates for what that might be. So you can see a few options down there ranging $262,000 to $4,000. So a bit of a costly endeavor. If you move it to the basement, the pros are, because the basement is currently basically undeveloped, there would be the opportunity to really develop the space specifically to the needs of the library, as opposed to just working with what's there. The cons to the basement is that, of course, there would be accessibility issues. There is currently an elevator shaft, but no working elevator installed. So that would have to be put in. So in addition to the cost of renovating the space, the elevator shaft would have to be dealt with. And you can see that option is also presented. So to go in the basement, I mean, you're also looking at, $200,000 or so. So just kind of presenting that if the library were moved to the Civic Center, there are a couple of options. They both present, a not insignificant cost, and there would have to be discussion around that with the pros and cons. All right, let's go to the next slide, please. So the question was raised, okay, we're looking after these buildings, we're paying X number of dollars per year, and okay, there may be some value down the road, but does it make sense now to maybe get rid of one or two of these buildings, and then in 10 or 15 years time, when the community is built up, is more vibrant, do we go ahead and rebuild? So we did a quick estimate of the cost. So we've got the 5 facilities that we looked at. And in the second column, there is 10 years of capital and maintenance. So that's based on the study done by ISL in terms of all of the anticipated repairs, as well as the annual, ongoing operational expenses. So again, utilities, maintenance, et cetera. And this is what it would cost to run the buildings for 10 years. In the final column, you see an estimated cost, and this is the estimated cost to build basically the equivalent new building 10 years down the road, but in today's dollars, so that we're comparing apples to apples. And this is based on a study done by Altus Group, the area. So to provide the same square footage of building, what it would cost to rebuild it versus what it would cost to keep the building going for 10 years. So I guess what we say is, in most cases, there's likely not a significant cost. And in fact, it very well may cost significantly more to rebuild the building facility down the road as opposed to keeping it going. Now, of course, if you do rebuild, again, that does also have other benefits, such as, okay, you can really design the building for the space to make it work for you. And I mean, that's not captured here, but purely from an economic standpoint, there does not appear to be a lot of benefit in getting rid of, so whether that's selling or simply knocking the building down and then building a new one in 10 years, does not appear to be an economic benefit and may actually cost more. All right, let's go to the next slide, please. All right, so yeah, just a quick summary, and then I think after the summary, we can probably get into a little more open discussion if anyone has questions. But really just to summarize the situation is currently all of these facilities are being used to some extent, some much more than others, but they are all being used. There does appear to be capacity right now to condense. So could get rid of one or more of these buildings, move some of the users around and still fit them all into the space. That option does appear to be there. However, as discussed, there does appear to be a low demand for real estate right now, which suggests if a building was sold, might not get great value for it. Another concern that was raised is that one or more of these sites may have possible environmental liability, which would come into play if the facility were either sold or demolished. Looking at the future, again, there is significant planned investment in the community. If that comes to pass and the growth in Wabamun is realized, this is going to result in increased need for municipal services. Based on the discussions we had with all of the users and parties involved, it's expected that the current facilities could also meet these future needs. So if all of these buildings were maintained and kept available, there wouldn't be the need to build additional down the road. As well, there is expected to be a higher demand for real estate in the future, which would lead to higher prices. So again, kind of building on that previous slide, which didn't even factor in real estate differentials, selling a building now for pennies on the dollar and then potentially in a, down the road having to rebuild or acquire land or space in a much more expensive environment. So yeah, overall, facility disposition will, it's an option and will decrease expenses now, but given the growth plans, this will likely result in higher overall expenditures in the longer term. All right, if we want to head to the next slide. So these were the recommendations based on our review and findings with the Civic Center. Again, it was felt it made sense to retain the building and probably add users, and whether that is the library or others. The building is currently underutilized, and given its location and previous role, I mean, it does seem to have the potential to serve as a community hub. Julie Hall, well, it likely makes sense to dispose of the building by gifting it to the community. Other community halls throughout Parkland County operate, under that, where the community itself operates, maintains the building, and receives grant funding from Parkland County. And it showed that this could result in up to $250,000 in annual savings. I will, addend to that in the short term, there would be additional supports needed in the transfer. There are some, repairs and capital items required by the hall that if just immediately sent to the community, there's likely no way they'd be able to pay for that. So, the $250,000 savings is down the road. The savings in the near term would be lesser, but still significant. The old fire hall and the public works buildings, felt it likely makes sense to retain these buildings. Both of them are relatively low cost, especially on a per square footage basis, and play a fairly significant role in municipal service operations. So multiple municipal departments are there storing equipment, they have people situated there. And they help provide, enhanced services. The old water treatment plant is another building, I think, where possible disposition could be looked at. Like I said, it's only lightly used for storage right now. So the sewer flusher, which is stored there, is quite large and heavy. So it needs a basically unloading / ramp facilities to accommodate that. So there would have to be some investigation into where that could be accommodated elsewhere within the county or community. There may be an environmental liability associated with building, so that would need to be further explored before determining if disposition's an option. Yeah, so that's really the recommendations. I guess we can move to the next slide. And that's where we say thank you, and then we open the floor to any discussion or questions that anyone might have. Thanks.
Well, thank you very much for that presentation. There is a motion before the committee. I'll ask Councillor Weidman to put the motion forth, please.
That the Wildman Facilities Review presentation be saved for information as presented. Do you want me to ask my questions?
Yes, please.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for the presentation. Just a few things here. Given the real estate prices right now and the way things are selling out there, I don't see any of these selling other than possibly the water treatment plant. Do you have a number for the area that the plant has, the land area, not the square footage of the building?
I don't have that in front of me. I don't believe it was in the documents we received either.
Okay, I'm just trying to determine if there's a viable lot there, a building lot, and you could sell it with the building that's there already, because it's not doing us any good holding on to it. The rest of the facilities there, we're going to have to pay for maintenance one way or the other if we keep them. The gifting of the Jubilee Hall, we don't have a community league out there yet, so I'm not sure we're going to gift it to it. Nobody wants it. But I guess if we get a community league, then I guess we'll end up having to look at that situation. So that's one. Civic Center, you have a brief idea of the structural capabilities of it. There is possibility of strengthening the floor upstairs to take the books. The books, there's not that much weight there. I thought there was more books than what there is, but there's really not many books in the library anymore. It's more, I think, programs and shelving and stuff like that. So I don't think there's that much weight there. So that's it's probably the option for the library. I think the public works buildings in the old fire hall, if we get rid of them, we're not going to probably utilize them in the way we want in that area. So I think it's probably better to keep. I could see a central hub being there eventually as the county grows, but try to keep the staff limited, because I know if you spread out staff, you're not very efficient. So I guess that's my comments. The old water treatment plant, I think, is the one we could get rid of right away if there's enough there for a building site.
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh.
Again, I would think, sorry if I'll just add on to that. I think we do need to explore the potential of an environmental liability there. I know, excuse me, that was raised during engagement as something that needed to be explored, existing options. So there may be none, but I think it would need to be explored before the decision could be made. I guess just again, in terms of the library on the main floor, there is a report, a separate report that was completed on that. They found that based on the books that were there and the users, it could theoretically support the library on the main floor without any structural upgrades, but it would require the books and the shelves being situated in a particular manner, and also limiting the number of users, not just in the library, but kind of the users per shelf. So basically, the underlying recommendation was there that this is an option, but probably not a feasible option. If the library's going on the main floor, there will need to be upgrades. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear, and that's based on the other engineering report that was completed separately. But anyway.
What do you mean a reduction in users? Like, are you talking people walking through the building?
Yeah, so basically in terms of, the number of people that are visiting the library, there would have to be limits placed on the number of occupants at any given time. But in addition to the limit on number of occupancy, there would have to be awareness/enforcement of where they are physically located within the library, making sure that you don't have 10 people all situated around one shelf. So again, it would be very difficult, probably not practical to enforce such limitations.
Oh, okay. I hope it's not made that poorly.
Thank you, Mayor, Councillor Weidman. Mayor Gamble, please.
Great, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the presentation and information. I guess I agree with your recommendations that in an economy right now, and also to Councillor Weidman's point, to sell low is not a good decision for Parkland County. But my first question would relate to Jubilee Hall. By us turning that over to the community, to which an association is non-existent at this time, probably doesn't make sense for us. And I understand the advantages to getting a tax receipt. However, we would be spending the same money out through a grant to upkeep the building regardless. So I think retaining ownership of the buildings would be wise and prudent at this point in time. I think for us, looking at recognizing we have operating costs, what are our opportunities to recover operating costs? And I think we should really focus on what are the best uses. We know the library exists in a current building. They potentially may move to another area. I support a main level for myself. I also know that there's things like FCSS, our own enforcement team, RCMP, who utilize some level of those buildings as well. But I think there's one opportunity, and I'm not sure if you've considered it. This is my ultimate question. What is the opportunity for Parkland County to be a landlord and actually gather revenue from some of these buildings? For example, medical and related services in some of these buildings, and theme them so that they can provide service and amenity to the community, but also perhaps have some element of returning some revenue to offset our operating costs.
Yeah, that is, I think, an item that definitely warrants consideration. And I think down the road, it's difficult to really get into or explore fully at this time, because I think we're talking about, and peers, feel free to jump in if I'm talking backwards here, but there's just a lot of unknowns between now and then. And I feel that if we get 10 or 15 years down the road and the community has experienced the growth that's anticipated, then definitely. I mean, there appears to be, especially in the Civic Center, if we move the library to the main floor, that still leaves the basement, and there's a lot of space there that could be used for one thing or another. It did come up in the discussions that we had currently. It sounds as though there have been a few businesses or ventures that have made inquiries into, is there some space available? I think one of them was a gym or a fitness facility. So there is some interest. And I think that is a possibility down the road. But I think each situation would have to be, you'd have to consider it on a one-off basis because, you know, the space would need to be developed. It would need to meet the needs of the business. So it's hard to, you know, provide a formal quantity or anything right now.
Great, got you. Thank you for your comments. I guess from my perspective, I would look at retaining ownership by Parkland County, upkeep, recognizing we have operating costs, but focus on the best use and opportunity for revenue in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on, Councillor Kowalski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Daniel and Pierce, for your presentation. A couple of questions, and I may be actually directing this to Mr. Cross. In the old fire hall, you list that fire services is working out of there. We built a magnificent new fire hall. Who would be in the old building still?
Madam Chair, tuning through to Councillor Kowalski. Fire Services stores their boat in there in the off season, and that's about the only tie they have to the building right now.
And I guess, did we ask the question about gifting Jubilee Hall to the library? The whole building, if we're going to gift it to the community, the library's there. Did you discuss that option?
Madam Chair, maybe I'd be best able to answer that, and then the gentleman could supplement to you and through to Councillor Kowalski. That hasn't been discussed. Certainly, as I mentioned earlier, administration will have to take this report away and develop some options for committee's discussion and comment. And so that is certainly something we can take away.
Thank you. Well, I certainly support, sorry, another question. Do we look at the cost of taking out the council chambers and just having that as a usable space? Is that renovation in this discussion at all at the Civic Center?
That was not explicitly looked at. Yeah, I think it probably could be. But yeah, no, we didn't look at renovations to the upper or main floor of the Civic Center, only the addition of structural supports.
Right. I guess from my perspective, if we have FCSS, we have Ag Services, we have other, we could have tax collection out there, we could have service collection, that the Civic Center makes sense for all of that to be out of one facility. And so what is our growth? What, you know, if we grow this community like we hope we do with our investment, what other services, municipal services would be offered? And should that staff, whether we have a recreation person, be located in the Civic Center? And to me, that makes more sense to look at building that out to our needs in the future and reserving it for that. I know there's some pushback about the library in the basement. I've been in the basement. It's not a basement. It's like 20-foot ceilings and the windows are massive. It's gorgeous. I didn't realize there was an elevator shaft, so that's an option. But then it would be part of the Civic Center, the hub of the community. So just some of my suggestions and thoughts. Thank you. I don't have an answer to any of this at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving into second round, Councillor Weidman.
Thanks. Going back to your original report there, you have a, just lost it here. You have option, library location, estimated total cost 1B FRO1. What do you mean by all of that?
I mean, I'd have to bring up the report, but from what I recall, again, this was done by an engineering firm. That's just how they labeled it. But basically, they came up with three alternatives for providing the structural support in the main floor. So I remember correctly, the least expensive option involved adding supports that reduced the usable square footage of the main floor to accommodate those supports. So it was the cheapest way to do it, but also reduce the overall usable space. And then the most expensive option had no impact on the usable space. It was all done by adding struts or beyond me, but basically improving the integrity without moving the space. And then the third option was kind of a hybrid in between. So mid-range in terms of cost, and then lesser impacts in terms of the usable space. So it was just, yeah, 3 different options for adding the structural support needed to support the library. And that report would probably be best reviewed independently, you know, if there were going to be further discussion about which direction to go. But that, in a nutshell, that was the difference between the 3 is less cost, but impact on the amount of usable space.
Okay, and then in your demographics, you use 6.4% for a 10-year change in population in Parkland County. And we've actually reduced our population in the last 10 years, have we not? We've lost about 2,500 people.
I would say not based on the Statistics Canada data that I used, but I know sometimes there are municipal census that are done. I don't know if that was done in this case.
So I think we were at 34,000, then we went down to 32.5.
I think the new census numbers are out this month, and I think we actually are back to that 34 or a bit higher. I think so. Yeah, yeah.
Madam Chair, through to Councillor Weeb. The numbers that the gentlemen are using are from the federal census, I believe. Is that correct, gentlemen? Yes, and we don't do a municipal census, so the numbers are the numbers from the 2021, I believe, is when the last federal census was completed. So.
But I still recall the numbers going down. So, yeah, this doesn't make any sense, but it's not the end of the world. I'm just trying to determine if we lost population or not. Okay, thanks.
Councillor Kowalski?
Thank you for the enlightenment about the options. I assume you'll provide that backup document to administration for their review, and they can share that with council at another date. Because I think that information is pretty much the biggest picture for the library.
Yes, ma'am.
That's me. I'm sorry, Dave.
Madam Chair, through to Councillor Kowalski. The gentlemen have provided that information. It was an oversight on our part for not including it as part of the package. When we come back in the fall, we'll have that information for you to help stimulate some of the discussion based on some of your comments here this morning around options and moving forward. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I thank the guests for dialing in. Thank you for that. I'm going to call the motion. All those in favor? The motion is carried. Moving on, we're going to go to our Parkland County Water Storage Shortage Plan. Mr. McGowan, would you like to introduce this item, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. To you and all the committee, we have Neil Jameson, the Director of Public Works here, along with Jadek Burrawalla to present the water shortage plan for Parkland County. I believe Jadek is going to do the presentation here, and Jadek, he is the Manager of Water, Wastewater, and Solid Waste Services. And this presentation is predicated on partly by the province, which they said their best management practices is to actually have a documented water shortage plan for municipalities, and so we have done so. And with that, I'll pass it over to Jadek for presentation, and we'll be happy to answer any questions the committee has. Thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Gowan. Just a couple of opening words for myself. Good morning, committee members, Madam Chair. This, as mentioned, is to do with our proposed Parkland County Water Storage Plan. Just a bit of a background, you know, as Mr. McGowan mentioned, it was a letter from the minister that stirred our desire to put something in place, formalize it, shall we say. For your information, the water shortage restrictions, as you see in the plan, they've actually been, you know, conditions A through D have actually been in place. I guess maybe it's a more informal for, well, I think I was in Spruce in '97. We had those measures in place. So throughout the years, you may have seen, you know, lawn watering on different days, that type of thing. So we've had these measures in place for a number of years, but we thought we'd formalize it with this plan. The conditions A through D are coordinated on a regional basis for the regional water customers around Edmonton through Strathcona County. Strathcona County leads the regional water customers group. They also negotiate water pricing with EPCOR. They negotiate our rates that EPCOR charges to us. And sometimes, they'll actually coordinate response A, if you like, for municipalities to reduce their water consumption, to actually mirror the city of Edmonton in city customers, because the more we can match the in-city customers' water usage, the lower our overall water rates are. So it's not just in response to a lack of water, it's also in response to keeping our water rates low that they do that. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jay for a presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Mayor, and Council. So I'm just going to directly jump into my presentation here. So first of all, like Mr. Jamieson said, we received a letter from Minister of Alberta Environment and Parks, asking to prepare the water shortage response plan early in winter this year to prepare against drought or water shortage scenarios. In response, Public Works Parkland County has developed a water shortage plan in alignment with the existing plan in place from a regional water customer group. This plan ensures that there is enough water available for essential use during water-related emergencies. This plan will help county to make decisions during water shortages. For example, early in winter, we had an emergency where E.L. Smith plant had a mechanical issue, which forced the regional municipalities to put water usage restrictions in place. And similar plan from regional water customer group help maintaining water levels in our reservoir. Next slide, please. As you can see here, there are water distribution networks of West Interlake District, as known as WILE, and EPCOR. EPCOR supplies water to Parkland through the Capital Region Parkland Water Commission and through West Interlake District Commission. Capital Region Parkland Water Commission is responsible for supplying water to our Atchison Zone 3 and Zone 4 reservoirs, where West Interlake District is responsible for supplying water to our Wabamun and Entwistle reservoirs. Can we have next slide, please? As you can see on this slide, this table here shows what type of restrictions will be in place at different level of conditions. These conditions are taken from regional water customer group, as I mentioned earlier, from their water shortage response plan. So going through this table, for example, condition A shows ban to municipal operations. That includes firefighting drills, street sweeping. So under condition A, firefighting drills and street sweeping, etc., will be banned. And so on. So can we have next slide, please? On this slide, I just wanted to briefly touch base with for our Entwistle water reservoir scenario. So Entwistle has a small reservoir which has a capacity of 817 cubes. And table here shows different level of reservoir and what conditions should be in place for water restrictions. Under normal or average consumption condition, this reservoir can only go up to 1 day without receiving water from the WILE Commission. We used to have a water treatment plant in place before WILE tied in, which is now on standby with the source of raw water. Just in case if we face a water shortage scenario in Entwistle, then this plant can be turned on to feed Entwistle temporarily. Also, just to mention that new reservoir is under construction with higher capacity to store more water. Can we have next slide? Same here for the Wabamun. The table shows the Wabamun reservoir capacity at different levels, and level of restriction should be in place at different capacity of the reservoir. There are two reservoirs in Wabamun, upper reservoir with the capacity of 1,000 cubes of water and lower reservoir with the capacity of 500 cubes of water. While Commission supplies water to lower reservoir and county pumps from lower reservoir to upper reservoir. Under normal or average consumption condition, this reservoir can go up to 5 days without receiving water from the Wild Commission. Can we have a next slide? Again, same concept here. The table shows the HSN Big Lake Reservoir capacity at different level, and level of restriction should be in place at different capacities of the reservoir. There are two reservoirs here too, Zone 3 with the capacity of 5,000 cubes of water, and Zone 4 with the 9,000 cubes of water. Under normal or average consumption condition, this reservoir can go up to 4 days without receiving water from Wild Commission. Zone 3 pump house operates during night hours, and Zone 4 pump house operates during daytime. Also, Zone 3 pump house has truck fill and barrel fill to serve our rural customers, as well as it also has a fire pump to supply water during fire emergencies. With that, if you guys have any, if you or council have any questions.
So let's put the motion on the table. Could I ask Councillor Kubasiak to put that on?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll put the motion on the floor that the Parkland County Water Shortage Plan be received for information as presented.
Do we have any questions or comments? Councillor Weidman?
Yeah, I think, you know, we do our best if there was a water shortage, but I don't think the public realizes we all rely on basically one pipe, and that's from EPCOR. So really, if something happens to EPCOR, which it did last year, we're pretty well hooped, and we do our best, I guess, to conserve water. You all know what to do to conserve water anyway ahead of time. The emergency plans we make, and I know at the Capital Region Water Commission, basically, our plan is get it fixed as quick as possible if it's in our control, but if EPCOR cuts us off, we're in big trouble. So I think then you implement water hauling, you'd implement reservoir hauling and to top up the reservoirs from some other location, but other than that, there's not much you can really do in an emergency.
Thank you. Any more further questions or comments? Okay. Well, thank you so much for that report. I will call the motion. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Okay, moving on to our next item. This is the Municipal Development Plan Project. I don't think Ms. Damajan is here, so I will just have you come forward, or, Mr. McGowan, could you introduce this item?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am the acting General Manager for for Planning and Development while Nancy Damajan is away. So with that, I would like to introduce and bring forward our Planning and Development team here to give us a municipal development plan project update for Stage 2. And Stage 2 is the public engagement portion of the plan. So with that, we have April Gallis, the acting director, and we also have Derek McDonald, the long-range planner. So they're here to present that update for committee, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
All right, good morning. Ledge Services, you guys okay with just running the slides? Awesome, thank you. So, hello, Madam Chairperson, Mayor and Council. It's my pleasure to be here today to provide you with an overview of the Municipal Development Plan Project, also known as the MDP project, and the Stage 2 Public Engagement Summary from earlier this spring. As Rob mentioned, I'm joined by April Galley, Acting Director for Planning and Development Services. Natasha DeSandy, of course, is an integral part of this as well as our senior planner, but she is currently deep in it with all of our other departments and working groups shaping the draft policies for you guys for later this year. So she sends her best, and we'll do our best to try and keep the tone up as she normally does. Next slide, please. So we'll go with the presentation overview. So we're presenting you today as a part of our team's commitment to keep you informed of the MDP project, gather your feedback, and answer any questions prior to heading into Stage 3 of engagement. So we'll start with the general update on the project, then shift to an introduction where we'll talk about where we are in the MDP engagement timeline, jumping into an overview of what we did in stage 2, cover some engagement statistics, and review the results of what we heard. We'll finish off the presentation by sharing what additional engagement has occurred since stage 2. So you guys have all heard of our county roadshow, so we'll share a little bit about that. And then what's to come for the future stages of engagement and presenting our recommendation for you. Next slide, please. So for an overall project update, so in the second quarter of this year, we drafted the municipal development plan structure, or just what we want this document to kind of look like and flow to. So as you guys have heard previously, we're looking to make this a slimmer document that's organized in a way that is efficient, transparent, adaptable, and readable. And we're really excited to share with you what that looks like coming soon. So in Q3, which is now, we're drafting the actual MDP policies. So we're writing the thing. It's very exciting. And we're excited again to share that with you later this year. We'll also be launching stage 3 engagement this July. So at that point, we will have a draft to be able to share with yourselves as well as the public. Then we're going to get into the finalization of it all. So taking what we've heard in that final stage and through all the different stages of engagement, including the workshops that have been done with yourselves, as well as all the other engagement we've done with our internal working groups and external stakeholders and shareholders, to be able to make that finalized version that will be presented to you then in the approval stage, which is coming to you in the end of this year and moving into the start of 2025. So really looking forward to that, and we'll definitely have lots more touch points with you as well to be able to share where we are at each stage, and so that you can also share that with your residents. Next slide, please. So let's get into what happened earlier this spring in stage 2 public engagement. Next slide. So just a review of where we are in the engagement timeline right now. There's 3 formal stages of engagement with this project. So stage 2 we're kind of in between that stage 2 and 3. So this stage was preceded by our project kickoff open houses that happened last year over the spring, summer, and fall of 2023, and the stage 1 engagement that occurred in the fall of 2023 as well. Stage 2 is then followed by stage 3, which will be launching right away here and happening over July of this year. And then we're going to have the public hearing and approvals process that's projected, as I was saying, for fall 2024, winter 2025. Next slide, please. So what do we do in stage 2? Well, we had a public survey that ran for over a month. We had an open house in April, and then we also had a community workshop that same time, and as long as with a virtual industry session as well. And then we also had discussion guides, so we were able to provide that to our community groups and our industry groups. So if there was anything during those sessions where they either couldn't attend them or they had additional follow-up, they could review. So those are the different events that we had, and we can move on to what we actually did for communications to be able to advertise those events. So we sent out ads within the Your Parkland newsletter. We had social media running in the weeks leading up to the events and during. We had over 600 unique visits to the Your Parkland MDP project webpage, as well as emails to project subscribers, which has increased from the initial numbers that we had. It was around 60 to 70 people. During this point in time in the project, we had about 140 to 150 people, and now we're well over 200 people who have subscribed to the website, which is great to see that increase as we get further detailed in. We also advertise in the county newspapers, as well as on the public calendar and digital signs on the website. Next slide, please. So here's just some of the engagement highlights. We had over 101 respondents to the survey. We had 56 in-person visits to the open house, and we had 13 participants in community and industry events. And then getting into the key findings of what we heard from all of those people. What did our participants have to say? Well, we worked with our project consultants to be able to summarize the feedback into 4 key themes. That's in the report provided to you as well. So first, protect natural and agricultural areas from cumulative impacts. So there was a recognition that cumulative impacts, or what maybe happens just on one site, is maybe not as much of an impact, but when it happens on multiple sites across the county, there can be larger impacts that we should recognize and be able to address, or at least acknowledge as part of the MDP project. The next was keeping parkland rural. So it was the draft goal that kind of resonated the most with participants within our engagement, and is a reoccurring theme that we've heard quite frequently through the rest of our engagement activities. It's not just about having natural areas and agricultural lands, but it's also about the actual experience of living in the county. So it's seen as a way of life, and a sense of community and connection were considered important, as well as culture, diversity, and heritage. Third is concentrate residential development to prevent further fragmentation. So this kind of ties into cumulative impacts a bit, but they're concerned about, or residents were concerned about, the fragmentation and loss of agricultural and natural areas and the impacts to existing residents from development, especially where development is more concentrated on the eastern side of the county. So many residents express support for clustering development and building out existing subdivisions prior to further subdivision development being added. And there's also general agreement with concentrating residential density and employment uses in the hamlet of Womban. And fourth, we had balanced clarity and flexibility in development rules. So there was multiple perspectives. This isn't just about saying we need less rules or we need more rules. It's more about making sure that the rules we do have are clear and easily understandable to the people using our documents in planning and development. So that was great feedback to be able to hear, because that is exactly what we're trying to do with this project. There were, in terms of the request for stricter rules, it was more about enforcement and protecting natural areas and natural drainage patterns. When it comes to clearer rules, they also would like to see less discretion, which is often tied to the desire to eliminate the amount of studies required and reduce interpretation that could be interpreted differently between different departments that they're working with. Next slide, please. So after stage 2 and in between stage 3, we launched the County Roadshow to be able to kind of bridge the gap between residents and participants in this project, seeing a final version and having their say in shaping the ideas that are going into the policies that we're making. So we partnered with the Land Use Bylaw Redesign team, and we shared those ideas over the course of a week in every division that we could. And it was great to see so many of you out there as well. We really appreciate the support, and I believe the participants who attended also really appreciated seeing you there. We also hosted, for those who could not come to the roadshow, a chat with a planner on June 19th. So this is just a forum that we used online for people to be able to voice any questions they had about our projects going forward so far. And we're going to continue that throughout the rest of the summer and into the fall here. In terms of community outreach, so we had a very large advertising campaign. We did some things that we haven't done in the past, including road signs that were at each of the different event venues or areas where the events were being held, as well as the Parkland County Center. We had an advertising video online as well as radio ads. We really tried to make sure that we reach as many people as possible. We also attended different community events prior to, so including the Jackfish Lake Management Association. They had an annual general meeting in May, so we presented and attended with them at Carville Hall, as well as the Tomahawk Library Seniors Day, which was really well attended by about 60 different people, so we were able to get lots of exposure for our event there. And what that resulted in was over 80 people coming and visiting the roadshow total, and being able to have double digits in each of the events venues that we attended in, which was great to see. And we were able to get really good quality feedback. And people who came in were very much interested in the project and going through each of the different stations we had with them. And the details of all of that will be shared with you in a later date before stage 3. So we're just working through finalizing that now. Next, please. So what is next? So we've got our ongoing chats with the planner. So that'll be July 17th, August 14th, and September 18th. And then we also have the formal stage 3 engagement launch, where we are going to share and gather, or share the draft MDP with everyone and gather feedback. So that will be launching right away here for advertising, and then the actual stage will launch in mid-July. So we'll have lots to share with you, to be able to share with your constituents on what events we're having there. Next, please. So in conclusion, stage 2 is now complete. We had a wide range of events and engagement types as a part of this stage, and then also added some more in afterwards to try and make sure that we're telling the story in a way that flows well for everybody and keeps everybody on board as we go through this. And we also received really valuable feedback that is directly shaping the policies that we're currently drafting, and you will see as a draft version of the MDP shortly here. Next slide. So that brings us to the recommendation. So that the municipal development plan, the municipal development plan stage 2 public engagement summary be received for information as presented.
Yes, thank you very much. Councillor Kubasiak, could you please put that forward?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Move that the Municipal Development Plan Project Update and Stage 2 Public Engagement Summary be received for information as presented. And I'd just like to offer a comment. I've attended some of the sessions at the county and Mirror Lake, I remember, and at Blueberry, and I noticed the adaptation to, meeting the needs of community and presenting information is getting more finely tuned. And people coming in know more what to expect. Staff who are on site are, Derek, yourself, very enthusiastic, April, very enthusiastic, able to respond to people's questions. And I'm just finding it's getting to be more and more refined. By the time we're finished, we're going to ace it. But it's been a really positive experience, and people come prepared with comments related to the plan, but also sort of peripheral issues they bring up. They see that as an opportunity, which speaks to the fact that they're comfortable, they're coming to those sessions, and they're being connected with Parkland County. So appreciate what you've done, and it's a long process, but it's gaining momentum in more positive, in a progressively positive manner. So thank you.
Please.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the presentation, and really great to see April and Miss Gillies and Derek here always. I do want to comment that I did attend the session at the fire hall, the Atchison Fire Hall. It was, I can't use any other word other than delightful, which is really interesting when you're doing public engagement. The setup, the storyboards were amazing. The ability to vote with poker chips, they weren't poker chips, they were bingo chips. It was very, very inventive. There was a fun element to it, but it created a lot of attraction. And just the way our staff, your staff, Ms. Gillies, welcomed our residents was so heartwarming. So congratulations. I'm also finding some of the feedback interesting, like the 9% that said none of our goals met their needs. I don't know what that means, and I'm sure that makes you kind of wonder too. But we're going upstream with this community consulting, so congratulations.
Councillor Weidman and then Bernie.
Yeah, thanks. I just, my comments are, I'm a little concerned because the MDP is so important, the lack of participation on residents' part. You guys have done an excellent job in marketing it and getting it out there and getting feedback, and you can't do any better, I don't think. So it is what it is. When we get the final draft done, people are going to have to accept it. They had their chance. They had more than what we normally do as far as public consultation. So you guys have done a great job there. I've been to a few of them. You can't do any more. You can't drag them in by the neck and make them participate. There's some numbers there that I just have to go down here. There's higher numbers that they've skipped questions than I thought there would be, but that's also not our issue. It's people, they just maybe don't understand or don't want to answer. So again, good job, and there's not much more you can do. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Bernie.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate what they've all said. You've always done a great job. I went to the Blueberry Open House, and it's really interesting to see these answers take shape. The MDP is taking shape by what, the feedback that we're getting. So, and I'm really looking forward to seeing this complete and the changes that we're going to make through the county, allowing certain things. And, yeah, you've done just a fabulous job. So congratulations on that, and keep going.
You can't take the summer off.
Mayor Gamble.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to our presenters and the efforts that you've put forth with the roadshow. I concur with Councillor Weidman that when you're out and you're looking for public engagement, you can do what you can and what you get is what you get. But I appreciate the broad areas that you went to encourage and engage with our residents, and job well done there. Also recognize that this is one of the most important documents for Parkland County. It sets out our municipal development plan that refers to an area structural plan, and also looks at regional plans that are put forth by the EMRB. So trying to fit all of that hierarchy together, I understand the complexities and the challenges, and certainly look forward to the next step. So job well done, and thank you.
Second round, Councillor Weedman.
Just a thought occurred, are you going to plan to go back to some of the different committees like SDAB and that, and some final input? We were at SDAB the other day, and we had some discussion on small houses and things like that. Probably a bit more needs to be said, but I'm not sure if that was your plan or not.
Thank you, Councillor Wiedemann. We have been engaging routinely with council committees. We have not been with the SDAB directly, but we are aware that they deal with planning and development processes and are taking into feedback through the Agricultural Service Board, the Community Sustainability Committee, and the Economic Development Committees. We will plan to provide updates or see how they'd like to be engaged in the future, so stay tuned.
Councillor Kowalski.
It may be with Ms. Williams and look at some of the decisions that have been made over the last 4 years and things that, and I think there's a lot of good information about our development process that may inform some of your thinking. Why was this allowed and why was that not allowed? Some really interesting decisions that were made based on our bylaws, so it might be a useful source.
Thank you. Personally, I love seeing democracy taking place right before our eyes, and it's great how the popular ideas come to the surface, and then they are re-examined by the community once again. Well, with that, I call the motion. All those in favor? Okay, the motion is carried. Thank you very much. Yeah, moving on, we're just going to try to power through all this stuff. We have the Rural Municipalities of Alberta contact letter. Mayor Gamble, could you please put that forth?
Thank you. I will move that the Rural Municipalities of Alberta contact newsletter be received for information as presented. No comment. Thank you.
Okay, hearing none. The motion is before us. All in favor? Thank you. Moving forward, I will ask Councillor Weedman to put forth the Federation of Municipalities update letter.
Federation of Canadian Municipalities update be received for information as presented.
Okay, calling the motion. All those in favor? Okay, thank you. Motion carried. Moving on, all we have is to go into closed session. I will ask Councillor Bernie, if you're prepared, to put that forward.
I move that the committee convene in closed session pursuant to Section 197 of the Municipal Government Act to meet in private to discuss matters protected from disclosure by Sections 21 and 24 of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act.
All those in favor? Motion carried at 11:41. Just take a couple of minutes and we'll take 5 minutes. Welcome back to a regular session. I wish to confirm that the only motion made in closed session was a motion to put forward by Councillor Kowalski. And we revert to regular meeting session at 12:22. So, moving on, I guess that's pretty well it today. Now we are at the end of our GPC meeting. The next one is scheduled for September 3rd, 2024 at 9 a.m. I will call the meeting to a close at 12:24. Thank you. Thanks.
So we have briefing at 1.